Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Glad to have you with us. You've been on the show before.
Yes, sir.
But back then, you were doing a campaign where you were actually going around the country and spreading the word about your anti-bullying program, right?
Yes, sir.
You still doing that, bud?
Well, yes, sir, we're doing it. But, okay, back then when I talked to you, I was doing it as a full-time live tour. So let me tell you what that meant. That meant I toured 9 full months of the year, the entire country. Like I was 100% on the road for 9 full months. So now we're still doing that, but we're taking a little break from. I just didn't want to travel that much. I was traveling 40,000 miles a year by vehicle. I did 44 states of the United States, 300 shows. I did 1,000 shows in 3 years.
Wow. Now, what about did you see an impact from that?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, yeah, because I have boxes and boxes of cards and letters and things from kids and schools and stuff where kids are able to say, hey man, I really appreciate what you did and you helped me in this situation. And not that I was able to, but you know what I'm saying, to somebody to stand up and tell them that you can stand up and be, what you want to be and be amazing, or you can get ahead of things like bullying, or even people that were bullied being able to kind of be inspired to not be, to just be nice to people, that to use whatever strength you have, that be it physical or emotional or whatever, to stand up for people instead of against people.
Now, I don't think we talked about your beginnings during that interview. So that, as part of this Superhumans Among Us, where we turn the spotlight on people in our audience who portray and live a superhuman life. And just for the record, for those of you listening, I'm asking you to email me at onair@superhumanradio.com if you know someone who is living the life of a superhuman. You don't have to be someone who's lifting gargantuan weight, but are you living a physical culture lifestyle? Are you living the type of life that we talk about on this show? It's not about having the ability, and we're going to talk about some amazing strength that Bud Jeffries has, but I don't want people to misunderstand the purpose of this segment. It's not about you being the strongest guy in the world. It's about you putting that effort forth to live that superhuman lifestyle. So if you know somebody, nominate them. We'll get them on the show. So, Bud, where do you begin with physical culture? How do you get indoctrinated into this?
Well, I actually it actually started out as something that was just horrific. I mean, I actually had a car accident at 5 years old, and I was walking down the
Bud, did we lose you?
street.
I think you're fading in and out. I don't know if you have a wireless connection.
No, I'm on Skype with you. I've got a straight on connection here.
Okay, good. So you were 5 years old, and that's where we dropped you.
Yeah, had a car accident. A van hit me, and it crushed my hip, and it fractured my skull, and put me in the hospital for more than a month. Put me in a body cast for 3 or 4 months or more, and then I was in rehab for nearly a year after that. And the thing was, I had to learn to walk again, man. I had to start completely all over again. And in doing so, my mom got me interested in martial arts, or actually started taking me to martial arts classes to help build, flexibility and mobility and get the things just to be able to move around. And I'd always been interested in strength, and that really inspired me. And so I've been athletic in that vein since I was a little kid. And then I progressed sort of through the American system into football and got into strength and stuff like that. And now the bullying thing actually starts there too, because, okay, this is the 1970s, and, for rehab and stuff, there really wasn't a lot of rehab. And then during the time I was in those casts and couldn't walk, they're giving me all these cortico drugs and, all this stuff. And so I went in this cast as a little, wiry little thin kid and came out 6 months later as a fat kid.
Ah.
And
so people were making fun of
bullied.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and so later on, though, it turns around because at, 13, 14 years old, I I get interested in football, and I fall into this really this huge blessing, man. I get in, and the school I went to that had football was a small private school in that year, and then I moved to a public school later, and then into college. But the school didn't have a weight room, and they said, you got to lift weights, you're going to play football. So there's a little local gym next to my house that I had no idea what it was. I'd just seen it. So I went in there, and it's an old school powerlifting gym.
Okay.
And so from the first day, okay, they actually kind of let me loose and just kind of watched me the first 2 days. And the third day, somebody walked in and said, hey, man, why don't you come work out with our powerlifting team? And so, like, literally from my jump start into lifting weights, into strength or whatever, I get into the old school power lifts, and I get taught the right way, and I start competing pretty much immediately. 6 months later, I was competing, and I won the state championship and won at 4 state records. And so, then I went on from there.
Give me your best competition lift: squat, deadlift, and bench press.
Okay. Now here's where we differentiate. Okay, so I competed off and on in powerlifting through about 4 weight classes for about 14 years. I'm sorry. Okay. So I went from being a kid. I won the teenage nationals at 275 with a 550 squat, a 320 bench, and a 500 deadlift. But later on, I got out of any kind of powerlifting gear, and my best lifts were raw, was an 800 competition squat, and then, let me think, a 4-something bench, and then a 650 deadlift in competition. But then I quit competing and started following my own path, and I got light years stronger. A couple of years after I stopped competing, I actually squatted 1,000 pounds raw. Now I did my own way, so I do a bottom start squat. And I really started to follow. Here's what I think. You talk about this whole superhuman concept, Carl. I think you can follow the rules and do it the way that everybody else does, but if you're going to unlock your own potential, you got to find your own way.
Right.
And I really started to use a tremendous amount of heavy power rack work and went into that and just had some ways of training that the old guys did 100 years ago. And it just unlocked some strength in me that went nuts, man. My best in the competition range of lifts would be a 1,000-pound squat. Now, I didn't do it that way. I started at the bottom, but it was raw. So actually, technically, that's a little harder way, but again, that's, what you want to do.
Scott Tavener, who I believe listens to the show from the UK, posted on today's show post, Bud is a beast. I'll never forget the challenge he put out about the 900-pound squat from the bottom position up. Awesome. So everybody remembers your bottom from the bottom up squat that you put up on the internet quite a while ago.
Right.
And that's a much harder way to do a squat. Let's face it.
Absolutely takes all the stretch reflex out. So it's a much tougher way to do it. And at that time, I kind of got obsessed with tying or trying some of the old time strongman feats, and that's really where I moved into the whole public show and doing the anti-bullying thing as a show, because I got obsessed with doing things like the way Paul Anderson did them, or the way some of the guys from like Herman Groner and those guys did in the different show feats from 100 years ago. And then I just got obsessed with going to every possible direction of strength. I love powerlifting. I love competition strongman. I competed in strongman. I won the Florida championship in that back in the very early start when nobody was doing it. I competed in Highland Games. I competed in kettlebell lifting. I did Highland wrestling. I did a little bit of no holds barred fighting. I wanted to try some of everything, but here's what I found. There is so much to explore in the strength world.
Right.
That it's an unlimited. It's a lifetime of things you can do. You know? And you can be great at lots of stuff. You don't have to just be a heavy lifter.
It takes some courage, but it takes some courage. People get used to doing something and they become good at it, and they kind of get stuck there. And it's almost like every day going to a fine restaurant for years and only ordering the chicken. It's like you never try anything else. And you're absolutely right. If you should feel confident that if you're strong, that strength will translate to other things. So try some other things, kind of get out of your comfort zone, right?
Absolutely. Because there's so much to experience, and we limit ourselves, so much. We really, really do in the possible experiences of life that we could do. In cutting out, I want to live in this idea of a limitless philosophy, man. I think I can do anything. Like, all right, I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, my workout was super heavy one-arm dumbbell presses, and I've been having a real, kind of real PR time in my life with them, getting some really great work with that. Tonight, my workout will be kettlebell snatches, and I'm going to shoot for 3,000 reps.
3,000 reps over what period of time, or just as long as it takes?
Probably just as long as it takes. I'll be shooting for something along the lines of 2 hours, but it may take up to 3. You'll just take whatever it takes. It's just one of those. Depends on how horrible that gets after a while.
There's a picture on my Facebook page for today's show with you pressing a guy overhead, one-arm press, for a cancer fundraiser, right? Breast cancer fundraiser. Talk about that before we go into the break.
Okay, now some friends of mine put that they had it up at a gym in Tallahassee. Now the guy I'm pressing is Brett Fain, who is also a record-holding powerlifter. He's about 200 pounds, and I'm doing a one-arm press with him. And that's kind of one of my signature feats during a public show, because it really works great for a public thing. And if I walk into your place with a dumbbell, and you're a normal person, not a lifter, you don't know what that weighs. But if I walk in and grab an adult human and lift him overhead with one arm in a regular press,
right,
you understand that that's strong because you understand, wow, that's a grown-up human being.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The general public can't translate a hunk of metal very well.
Scott Tavener just graciously posted the link to YouTube video of an amazingly impressive feat of strength, and it is Bud Jeffries coming out of the hole from the bottom position with 1,000 pounds on his shoulders. No wraps, no squat suit, no straps up or straps down, just a belt. It's very impressive. Your hair was longer back then, Bud.
A little bit, yeah. I was also about 100 pounds larger.
Yeah, you definitely were bigger. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, that's amazing. You're down there. You're trying to find your position. I could tell you're trying to find where the bar should be, right on your back, because it's an unforgiving lift. Once you commit to it, you're either going to do it or you're going to crumble under it. And you get up about 80% up. You stick for a second, and then I can see you come down a little bit, and then you just push right out of it. It's amazing. And you even collapse in amazement on your knees from excitement that you actually did it, huh?
Yeah. Well, okay, you want to talk about this superhuman thing? Superhumans aren't created overnight, brother. That is the culmination. Like, people have given me a ration of crap about that lift because I don't know how much of the clip he showed, but I totally freak out after. But let me tell you why. That was the culmination of a personal quest of 16 years to make that lift.
Could you imagine 1,000 pounds from the bottom? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was it was quite a day. That was one of those days where I'd made that decision that if I don't make this lift, somebody's gonna have to carry me out. They're gonna have to call it.
You committed to it 100%. Okay, so let's talk about you for a second.
Okay.
What do you think would surprise people to know about you that they don't see from the exhibition videos and pictures and stuff that you post on Facebook and in your social media networks?
That they don't see.
Yeah.
I hope they'd be surprised I'm a lot smarter than I appear, because I kind of appear like this big barbaric, monster who just runs around and lifts heavy things and does wild stuff. But, I've written 8 books, and we produced like 35 DVD series, and I try to keep a fully rounded life. I'm actually an ordained minister. That's one thing.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a non-denominational, actually myself, and because I do a lot of work in different places in schools and churches around the world. But I'm probably the easiest going minister you ever met.
Okay. What kind of books do you like to read? Do you like fiction? Do you like nonfiction? What do you read?
I'm kind of into both. I really like historical work.
Uh-huh.
But I like motivational work as well. I like things and anything that interests me or gives me a new perspective. Things about comparative religion, things about health, different books on health or whatever. And then also, but I do like fiction as well. I used to be when I was younger. I was heavily into Lewis L'Amour, and then I was into Robert Howard Brown a lot.
Sure.
Not Robert. Robert E. Howard. I'm sorry. The creator of the original Conan series, which is the original writer. I love that fiction work. But then anything that improves your brain, man, anything that gives you a more fully rounded life. Now, I'll tell you something else they might not know. We grow a lot of our own food. Now, you might see that if you pay attention to me on Facebook. You might see that. But
now let's talk. That's a very superhuman thing to do. So when we talk about, do you have a small garden, or do you live on enough land where you can actually do some farming?
We do some farming. We live on enough to do some farming. We we do in the fall, even when I live in Florida, so it's warm weather, we can plant pretty much a lot of the year. But I do we do a smaller garden in the fall and then a larger one in the spring, and do a little more variety of things in the spring. And then we do a lot of things to preserve the vegetables or keep them up, canning and that kind of thing. And then we do as much as is practical with that, especially considering to my schedule and time and all the things. So I truly think if you're going to be healthy and long term, and some people look at me and say, well, this guy's still, okay, when they see that squat, I was 385 pounds. If you see me today, I'm between 285 and 290. I'm 100 pounds less. Right. Now, I did that very specifically to be healthier and also to really explore the possibilities of endurance, because endurance is such a huge thing. But it also has to do with food, man, and you can't not have those three pillars in health. You can't not have strength. You can't have cardiovascular endurance. You can't not have good food, and I'm talking about chemical-free and well done food to be healthy. You just can't have that. Those are immutable laws that you cannot ignore.
Right, and then your endeavors into strength have really been pushing your body in directions that some would say are counterintuitive. Like you love to do headstands, and you're a big guy to be putting that kind of weight on your neck. Aren't you worried about that?
No, I'm not, because I'm fully prepared to do what I'm doing. I'm not. It's not like I just all of a sudden one day said, I never trained my neck. Let's do headstands. No, I've consistently trained. Okay, if I was a 300-pound guy who just came off the couch and had never touched a weight and didn't have traps and neck and the things that that come with building a relatively muscular, old school 300-pound body, then I'd be worried about it. But okay, there's the thing. You got to consider that the variety in my workout would probably surprise a lot of people. I do quite a bit of yoga, a lot of flexibility work, mobility work. And then I get into stuff that, one day might be absolute max squats, and the next day might be headstands and one-arm handstands and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it would definitely worry me for somebody to do this who hadn't trained their neck. But, in the old school vein of things, that's one of the most important things to train is neck strength, trap strength. And I found that there's so much more to be explored with balance and body control that most of us never touch, man. They're really, those things are not the exclusive vein of the 112-pound gymnast. Right. But they're tough. They're tough, and obviously the larger you get, the more exponentially tough they get, simply because of the physics involved. Right. The physics of a 6-foot-tall, 300-pound guy doing a headstand is way different than the physics of a 5'1", 115-pound guy doing it. It's you've got 10 times the amount of lever and weight going against you, so it's a big thing. But the reason I do that, number one, it just interests me to explore things. I'm very easily challenged by, and I kind of live by this principle: if one man can do it, another man can do it. If you can do something, then by God, I want to try. Right. I want to see where I'm at, because I really want to know how effective my training is. And I also want people to see, inspire people. Hey, man, that guy's 3 times my size, and he did a headstand in a split. How come I can't get off the couch and go walk a couple miles and be healthier? You know what I'm saying? Right.
I want to take our next break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your personal life, too. I want you to tell the audience more about family, children, that sort of thing. We're talking to Bud Jeffries. Bud, do you have a website you want to plug during today's show?
Yes, sir. We just changed our website, and it is www.anunconventionallife.com. And that's the whole point of that, is a wide variety of strength, health, and improvement in every area. And we just don't do things the normal way. We do them better.
And unconventionallife.com. And as you can see, just like all the rest of the superhumans, he grows his own food. He understands the importance that nutrition plays, not just in performance, but in health. So, Bud, are you married? I don't know the answer to that, and I think the audience would like to know that as well.
Yes, I'm married. In fact, I will be married for 20 years this February.
Congratulations. And any children?
I have one boy, a 19-year-old boy, yeah.
What's his name?
His name is Noah.
Noah. So is Noah following in your footsteps in any way?
Noah is following in one small part of my deal and actually creating his own amazing situation. Okay, so let me kind of explain Noah to you. Noah looks totally different than me, man. Noah is 6'2" and 190 pounds of just muscle that won't wait. And Noah has probably one of the strongest grips of any human beings alive.
Wow.
He also is very diverse, and this is something you talk about superhuman. I think You become a superhuman because of the influences around you. And here's what we did with Noah. We did everything we could do to get him around people who were amazing in some kind of a vein or another. Someone who created a limitless mindset in him just by hanging around them.
Right.
So in growing up as a little kid, he hung around 4 or 5 or more of the strongest people on the planet. And he hung around, and I mean hung around them as in, okay, he calls Dennis Rogers Uncle Dennis.
Gotcha.
That kind of, see what I mean? It's that kind of a thing.
Right.
One of our friends who I think will maybe be on your show later, Peter Ragnar. He calls him like Grandpa. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. It's one of those things that are, even though Peter, looks like my age, but he's way septuagenarian and much advanced to us, but amazing. What we want to do is create a mindset to him that was absolutely unlimited. So let me give you advanced stuff that he's done. He did a 1,500-pound quarter deadlift, hand and thigh lift. That's kind of his baby, his specialty lift. So you're talking about a partial deadlift with about a 2-inch range of motion at the very top with 1,500 pounds.
Wow. And he had to hold on to the bar with his hands.
Well, now he does use straps that hard, heavy, but I've seen him do over 1,000 without straps.
Wow.
He's bent steel up into some of the biggest steel anybody's bent. If you know anything about steel bending from the old time tradition, there's a long bar called the Goliath bar. Okay. That is 1.5 inches wide by 1/2 inch thick by 4 foot long. And to my knowledge, there are about 5 humans on the planet who've bent one.
He's one of them.
He's one of them.
Wow.
I bent one. He bent one, and then several other guys, John McGrath, and a couple of guys have bent them. I've seen him do, ridiculous stuff. But he's also high-level jiu-jitsu. So he's very and combat sports. Has sparred with world champions and professionals there. He's also actually a national and state champion in sporting clay shooting. He was the grown-up Masters champion in Florida one year when he was 16 years old.
Really? The adult champion at 16?
The adult champion at 16, okay? And he got into also trick shooting, and he's the only guy I can find. He says there's other guys, but he's the only guy I can, because he's modest. He's the only guy I can find who's ever pulled off this trick shot, okay? So there are one of the classic trick shots is to throw a coin in the air and shoot it out of the air.
Right.
So he started practicing this in our yard. And he started off with a BB gun because it would be relatively safe. In other words, we're not just wild knuckleheads shooting firearms into the air.
Yeah.
We're being intelligent about things. And also it's cheap. So he used the Red Ryder BB gun from the Christmas Story movie. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Everybody's seen it. Yeah, Ralphie's gun. Yeah. Okay, and he practiced that, and he got to where he could shoot a quarter out of the air, and then a dime, and then an aspirin out of the air with that little cheapo $29 BB gun. And then he actually, and we have this on video, so this is not Daddy just bragging ridiculously. This is a legitimately documented thing. He shot a BB out of the air with a BB gun.
So how can you see the BB in the air? I mean,
his eyes are so much better than yours and mine, Carl.
Really?
and his hand-eye coordination and anticipation skills are so much light years ahead of, yours and mine, or just, anybody else that it's not even funny.
That's amazing.
But again, it's a practiced skill, and he's been taught since he could speak. If another human can do it, you can do it. You can do amazing things if you simply work and concentrate. And that's the whole thing of achieving a life that you want, be it creating things or creating, the life you want from money or keeping a marriage together. I mean, we've been married 20 years. We're one of the only couples that I know of that's still married after 20 years. But it's all specific work, man. It's all doing the things to make your life amazing in every area, not just being strong, but being healthy, living a long time, being mobile and flexible and pain-free, and having a wide variety of interests, and doing your best for other people to help those people, there's so much more to life, man. I mean, I love lifting weights, but I don't want to lift weights every minute, every day.
Right. So it sounds like autonomy is part of the superhuman prescription as well, that having an autonomous life, one where you can pursue the things that you love. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think your life, if you're not pursuing what you want to do, and it doesn't necessarily mean you do it for a living, okay? Now, over the years of my life and growing up from a kid, I mean, I just was not the guy who could do a 9-to-5 job. You know what I'm saying? Now that doesn't mean I haven't worked regular jobs and I've spent. I told this story. The first time I squatted 800 pounds was at 3 o'clock in the morning during a 70-hour work week in 30-degree weather.
Wow.
But it was because I didn't care what happened. I was going to do whatever I had to do to make those goals happen, be it work 70 hours or be it work out. And when I had a moment, in the middle of the day or at absolutely any moment, you cannot give up on your goals or your passion. Doesn't mean you have to do it for a living, but you might be able to. And it doesn't mean that even if you don't do something for a living that you don't necessarily love with deep passion, but it fulfills your family life, it pays the bills, and it allows you the time or effort or money to do things that help people and give an expression to your life. Man, we are not here simply to, shovel coal.
Right.
Now I believe you ought to enjoy whatever you're doing, and I believe any honest work can be enjoyed no matter what it is, even if it's not particularly in your vein of love, of passion. But some expression of your life ought to have the thing that sparks you in a way that nobody else that nothing else does. That in a way that's inexplainable, the thing that you love. Now, for me, a lot of it is strength, but obviously my son, it does a lot more shooting than that. He still does strength stuff, but my wife loves to cook. She has a website we actually kind of jokingly nicknamed her the Food Vixen. Well, and again, that's a whole thing of the food, and so she has this whole challenge of feeding these monster guys. Either me or the guys who revolve around my house or whatever, and giving us food that tasted awesome and kind of in the, the classic ways of big, strong food, but doing it in ways that are healthy and smart, not just, I believe you can eat pretty much anything as long as you create it from natural ingredients.
Right.
And, so there's so much to that.
Does she have a website?
Yeah, the Food Vixen. She has the foodvixen.com. She's on Facebook, and she's does some amazing food. And we really started doing that because, man, she made this amazing food. I mean, she's like a literal gourmet, man. In fact, I got a sweet potato pie sitting in the other room waiting on me right now.
That's funny. Yeah.
But that sweet potato pie, okay, had real grown sweet potatoes. It has a whole wheat crust. It has about 6 total ingredients, including whole wheat, coconut oil, honey, nutmeg, another spice or two, and sweet potatoes. And that's the entirety of what's in the pie.
Right.
So what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that. We're just conditioned to think that pie is bad because it's pie. No.
Well, no, because the way most pie is made, there's 96 ingredients in it.
That's right. But if your pie is made the way it was made 150 years ago, when there was no chemicals to put in it, and it was with real food and has real nutrition, the difference in what I'm about to eat, sweet potato pie, versus somebody eating just a straight baked sweet potato is about 20 calories.
Right.
There's no difference.
Right.
And it's so much amazing, and I started posting this food, man, and I started posting these pictures because it just looked amazing and it tasted amazing, and we got all this feedback, and she finally is about to come out with her first cookbook to do, to talk about that kind of thing, to talk about kind of the care and feeding of a monster as well as well as how to
doing it. But it sounds to me like it's a more ancestral style of cookbook because
absolutely.
She's cooking the way they used to cook hundreds of years ago and not today.
Absolutely, and we're exactly into that ancestral tradition of. I believe that is a huge key to health, man. Not only where you come from in a genetic basis, or from the the hundreds of years or thousands of years of your family, but the way that our food was prepared, and really, if you look at culturally, the way food was prepared all around the world, it's really not that different. It really has to do with sourcing local ingredients and being intelligent about how you eat, and just eating simple, basic things. And even the best chefs in the world, if you really listen to them talk, what do they talk about? They talk about executing the basics well. And that's exactly what we do. And that's a big key of every part of life. And it's the basics of strength, the basics of health, the basics of food, the basics of mastering your emotions, the basics of your spiritual life, the basics of money. I actually had I spent a whole week talking about this with friends because we got a new product coming out about that, about if you can't have a limitless superhuman life, if you don't master the basics of every area. If you spend every day fighting with your wife, you will not have the life you want because you won't be able to do. You won't be able to put out in your workout. You won't be able to think at work. Or if you spend 90 hours a week working and don't do anything else to keep everything else, you're totally out of balance.
Because if the basics throw you day in and day out, you're distracted. You can't make progress. You're running in sand. Bud, we know, those of us who like to play around with strength, that fatigue and strength occur in the brain.
Right.
Well, there's this idea that we have an unlimited amount of resources when it comes to dealing with challenges in the day, and we don't. Just like if all you can get is 8 reps with 315, you can't just magically go, no, today I'm going to get 12 reps. The brain, the body, they have their limits. And the same is true with dealing with challenges on a day in, day out basis. If every single day the little things cause you grief, then you don't have the mental energy to pursue the important things in your life.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true, Carl. If you're fighting with your wife every minute of the day, if you're constantly stressing about this, that, or the other, your attention is divided. And it's going to be divided on a level that's not, you can't just go in the gym and say, I'm going to turn it off and now I'll ignore it. A 1 in a million people is able to do that when their life is in total crisis. But the rest of us, and even then they're not really doing it. They're doing it, but they're not truly getting to a level, because even if everybody knows this, 80% of the gains you make are outside of the gym. You build strength in the gym, but you recover, you grow muscle, you grow everything else during the resting periods. And let me tell you something. If your brain is screwed up, your body will never function right. If your brain is not ever resting, your body will not rest. You will short circuit your muscular gains if the rest of your life is not in balance, if it is not together. And it's okay, it's a lot of it is simple stuff, okay? Because of what I've been able to do in the weightlifting world, I know a lot of, kind of big name guys. And if you see it, for me, it's about a 50-50 thing about whether their life is worth living or not. Okay. Now, are they awesome and muscular? Yes. But if you know about their personal life, you wouldn't trade that awesome and muscular for the chaos. And I'm not talking about everybody. The best guys generally are not chaotic.
Right.
They're generally pretty calm. They've mastered the basics at the other stuff. But you see, we've got this idea of I'll sacrifice everything to get to my goal. Well, if you're sacrificing peace in your personal life, you're actually going away from your goal, even if you don't know it or not.
Interesting.
You're throwing away if you're constantly, and here's the stupid thing about it, okay? You don't have to do that. That's like saying I'm gonna torture myself for no reason, and I'm gonna take the harder way to get to this goal when I can take the simpler way. And it's just by doing simple, basic things. You know what? One of the biggest things to do? Start freaking being nice to each other in your relationships. Start treating each other with respect. Start treating other people with respect, and suddenly you'll be treated with respect, and there's a lot less conflict in your life.
But now, wait a minute. There are some exceptions to that rule. I'm dealing with somebody right now who's close to me,
right?
Who has some siblings that are really just toxic individuals.
Right. Now,
and you could treat those kind of people nice until the cows come home,
yeah,
and they won't change. So what do you do in those cases, bud?
You know what? Sometimes you got to make the hard decision. And that is a totally different case, and that would be my one exception in further discussion of this, is if you have people that under no circumstances do they treat you with the respect you deserve, and sometimes you got to knuckle up and cut them out of your life. And now I realize that family situations, and everybody's got these, man, that family situations, you don't choose your family. And family is sometimes people that you cannot really cut loose in your life, but maybe you need to minimize contact or do whatever, and you got to go into situations like that with a mindset of you will not, no matter how you treat me, create a ripple in my life. I will not allow you to create anger or problems or situations. I will simply do what I have to do to fulfill the commitments of my life, and then the rest of it is on you. The problems you create is on you. And I've done what I can do, absolutely, to cut everybody in my life who has a truly toxic ability toward me out.
Yeah.
Now, there are obviously those situations, and sometimes in business and family, where you simply work with people that you have to work with. And this is the real world, and you can't just cut them loose, and that's all there is to it. In family, that's the same way. But some of that is on you. Some of that is on, okay, think about it like this. If you go to a gym, now I happen to train in my backyard, okay? I have all my own equipment and train in a very peaceful setting. But if I go to a commercial gym when I'm traveling or whatever, and the music ain't the way I like it, or there are people who are, in the way or whatever, I can choose to let that affect me, or I can choose to block that out. And that's one of the key things of the concentration and power that you build with physical training, because physical training is not just physical training. Physical training is mental training. Every time you push the body to the limit, it is a mind training session as well as a body training session.
Mm-hmm.
You take that discipline and power and move it over to the rest of your life. And sometimes you got to go to somebody else's house that you got to go to that's toxic,
and say, I'm going to go in here with exactly the same situation I would go in a gym. I'm going to ignore what I have to ignore and get what I have to done, and I'm going to get my objective done. That's all there is to it.
Right. Yeah,
and I totally agree. But sometimes you got to do the hard thing and just cut them loose.
What's coming up in the near future for Bud Jeffries?
Well, we have a bunch of things. I got several brand new books that'll be coming out in the next couple of months.
What are the books about, Bud?
Okay, I've one that's going to be an unconventional training, and it's going to be a real look toward my whole process and really a what's right and what's wrong with the unconventional training world. And I guess if you had to peg me into one thing, that's where I sit, because I train in so many different areas. So I'm going to give you the real what works, what doesn't, what's important, what's not, how I actually do these things, and the philosophy to get to a truly maximum, hopefully world-class level strength, as well as a world-class level of endurance and all the things necessary to get there together, as well as, a few cool tools and exercises to get along the way. That's really the gist in that book. And then we got one called Crushing Age. Now, that might surprise people. I'm 42 years old, which is no big deal. I still consider myself a spring chicken. But a lot of people, and the real reason I'm writing this book and finishing this book, I've actually got part of it written already, is that I see so many people, and so many people come up to me, and they're in their 30s, or they're 30.
Yeah, and they think that's old already.
And then they already do. They say, oh, I'm so old, I'm tired, I'm falling apart. I'm like, man, let me tell you something. I'm 42 years old. With the exception of a couple of lifts, I'm the strongest I've ever been in my life. I'm 100 pounds lighter than I was, and I've hit PRs constantly for the last 3 years in my 40s. Now, why? Because I simply found some things that work and found some ways to literally approach training that makes things work right. And this is stuff you should be doing in your 20s, not just your 40s.
Right.
And I just believe it's so much, and there are so many examples out there of people who are, 40, 50, 60. They look like they're 20. They perform like they're 20. And in every area of life, they do business like they're that way. They physically perform that way. Their relationships and love life.
It's a mental attitude. It's an attitude.
Absolutely, it is.
You could see the swagger. You could see two 65-year-old people, and one person has swagger and the other person is shuffling. It's an attitude. It really is.
Absolutely. Oh. And attitude has so much to do with it, man. I actually mentioned my friend earlier, and my friend Peter is such a profound influence on my life because he's such a great guy. But Peter is one of those guys who won't even discuss age because he is so mentally focused on living in the moment that age has absolutely no existence for him. It literally is a full-time attitude in the way that he lives. And this is a guy who you can't even define his age, but he's minimally 70s. And the guy runs up and down hills like there's no tomorrow. The guy's squatting 500 pounds at 190-pound body weight. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's just killing it. Why aren't we all doing that? It's because we don't think right. Yeah. We allow limitations to do that. So we got actually a product coming out with Peter as well that's going to be several videos. It's going to be 7 videos all about creating that basic balance in life and being excellent at the basics of both, relationships and emotions and energetics and physical and financial and all the things in life to give you a limitless ability, to give you the ability to literally crush through whatever the limits you are. Because, man, most of us are living so limited by the way we think, we're not even scratching the surface of our potential.